Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am just one of your friendly co-hosts. I'm here with my friends, my colleagues, my partners in crime, Patsy Feeman and Lev Tannenbaum. Welcome to you both. How are you today?
Well, thank you.
Very well, and I'm excited.
Tell me why. Why are you excited?
Well, we have a great guest joining us.
Yes, yes, we do. There you go. Yep.
All right. That's why I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that. So we are pleased. We're pleased today to have as our guest Charles Reed on the podcast. Charles is a certified public accountant, the U.S. tax court practitioner, former member of the IRS Advisory Council. He's a Vietnam vet, and he's the founder of Get Payroll, which is a full-service payroll tax, and other payroll-related services company. Charles is also the author of 4 books, the latest being The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups. And impressively, he's got over 50 years in financial leadership. Charles, welcome to the Frustrated CEO podcast.
Patrick, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today.
Of course. All right. So, listeners, some of the things we're going to cover today, we're going to cover Charles' experience in the military and the impact that it's had on his career, culture over the years, how hiring veterans has impacted his business, some of the strategies he's used to grow his business, and then, of course, what frustrates him as the CEO. But one of the places I want to start is in this longevity, this 50 years in financial leadership. That is obviously an accomplishment. Charles, I'm sure that the landscape of leadership has changed dramatically through the years, and we can and I think we will talk about that today. But so many of our listeners are challenged just by the daily grind of responsibility, trying to avoid burnout from the constant pressure of leading others and delivering results. And so 50 years, what's the secret? What's your secret to successful longevity?
Well, the simple answer is getting up every morning. Okay, you have to do it. You just have to get up and go to work. The second thing, though, is you got to take care of yourself. I'm a widower, and if I don't take care of myself, nobody will take care of me. Exercise, sleep well, take care of yourself, take vacations, be good to yourself. And it makes life a lot more pleasant. But literally, longevity is just getting up every morning and getting a good night's sleep and getting up the next morning and doing it again and again, rinse and repeat.
All right. Now, the self-care piece is, and we are 100% with you. We are advocates of that. We've had CEOs, founders, senior leaders on who that's a kind of a recurring theme. We also hear it's really challenging, right? It's easy in some seasons, but it's really challenging to maintain it. Is it as simple as, is it just a choice? I see you nodding, you're like not nodding, smiling. You're kind of like, I don't know that I agree. Tell me more.
If you decide to take care of yourself, do it. It's that simple. You feed yourself, you wash yourself, you put on clothes, you drive the car, you put gas in the car, you do all these things, right? Well, just make it a routine. I work out with my trainer 3 times a week. I set my alarm for 7:22. She's on either at the house or on the video at 8 o'clock. Boom, we do an hour. Okay. I've been doing that for years. It's a habit now. I don't know what I do without it. So make a habit out of taking care of yourself. I eat well. I sleep well. I sleep a good night's sleep. Well, most of the nights. Some nights things bother me, but for the most part, I sleep well. I take care of myself. I eat well. I exercise. I see my doctors twice a year. You take care of yourself. It's just do it. Okay. I don't mean to advertise Nike, but that's what you got to do. You got to take care of yourself.
I love it. Appreciate
Charles,
it.
how do you tie that then into the culture and the policies? Because I think sometimes, especially since COVID, there's been, the challenge of people working remotely. There's been other stresses on people's health and their ability to live out what you're talking about. Do you have certain policies or ways of supporting what you're talking about with your own employees?
Oh, absolutely. if you do it right, your employees are a family. You care about them. You take care of them. You make sure they take care of themselves. You don't stress over things like doctor's appointments, sick days. You got sick days, make sure you either get your FMLA or 43S tax credit for time off. Okay, don't forget that. It's a payroll tip. So, but it's like our bereavement policy. Our bereavement policy is you whatever it takes, whatever you need. If that's 3 days, that's fine. If it's 3 weeks, that's fine. Employees are too valuable. Good employees are hard to find, expensive to train, and extraordinarily expensive to replace. So don't be stupid about taking care of your employees. They are what allows you to succeed. Without them, you're not going to. You're going to be bankrupt in a heartbeat. I've seen this happen. I had a company where they treated the sales staff like crap after I left, and basically the better half of them went and massed to a direct competitor, and 90 days later, company was bankrupt.
Yeah.
You do it to yourself. Take care of your people. They're important to you. They should be. And if you don't treat them that way, if you treat them poorly, they'll respond poorly. If you treat them well, they'll respond well. Human nature.
And are there other strategies, Charles, that you have to ensure the growth of your business? Obviously, your people are foundational, but what other strategies have you found useful or imperative?
Well, I learned a very hard lesson in my business. I thought I could market. And so it was one of the last things I delegated out as we grew. And when I did, I found out I couldn't market my way out of a paper bag. I hired a market manager, and in 2 weeks I realized I didn't know what the hell I was doing, which was my fault. I overrated one of my own skills incorrectly. So the marketing and we adapt things. We adapt to the market. We change with it. We're all over social media now. We have our own YouTube channel. We do fun videos, educational videos. This is a far cry from pamphlets and handouts and door-to-door sales that this business was, when I started it a third of a century ago. We did things. We were a mobile accounting service to start with. We had a van, and we went out and we did the books at the clients. We now do books. We don't do books anymore, but we do payroll all over the country. We have clients in every state. We've adapted technology. You can't sit still. You've got to change with the times, with the technology, with the people, with things that are going on, with the laws and the changes in the laws. They change constantly, which is crazy. You've got to keep on top of things. You got to grow with it.
Charles, that's actually one of the questions I had for you, thinking about how long you've been in this space, or how long you've been in leadership. How has leadership changed over the years? And what are some of the changes that you're talking about that you've had to make to keep up with it?
Leadership hasn't changed. Leadership has been leadership for thousands of years. Technology changes. Customs change, outside society changes. Leadership, being able to direct and motivate people is age-old techniques. I learned a lot about leadership in the military. I was an NCO, a sergeant in the Marine Corps. Some of it doesn't apply to business. You don't get to take people out and shoot them in business. But one of the Marine Corps concepts is mission, men, self. You complete the mission, regardless of what it takes. And that is the overlying basis of our business is we provide perfect payroll on a timely basis every time. That's our goal. We want to get that client when they need it, a payroll that's absolutely correct every time. Then after you have focused on the mission, you focus on your men, your Marine Corps men, your employees. They're the ones that are doing the work. You take care of them. You see to their needs. Your job as CEO is to make their life easier and more efficient. The more efficient they are, the more profits you generate. The happier they are, the better morale is. All those things go to a culture that creates profits and longevity. Then, and only then, do you take care of yourself. You come last. That's Mission Men Self. That's Old Marine Corps leadership training.
Charles, in terms of the diversity of your workforce, have you seen changes? I mean, I'm sure you have over the years in terms of who you hire, why you hire certain people. Is there is it a diverse workforce? Because
Sure,
you know,
I've got people of different colors, genders, national origins, religions. I don't care if they can do the job and they fit the culture that we have. They're welcome. I like Warren Buffett. I don't hire jerks. I hire nice people. Okay, if they're a jerk, I don't want them in here. I don't care how good they are, how smart they are, how talented they are. If they're a jerk, they're going to be disruptive. They're not welcome. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
How do you hire? Is that part of the intake process? How do you prevent the jerks from getting in, or do you just have a really good jerk detection process?
Well, my wife was the jerk detector. She was a far better people person than I am. So I've substituted that now. Since she passed a few years ago, anybody we hire gets interviewed by everybody in the company.
Whoa.
wow,
And anybody can blackball them. It's
Wow.
that simple. If they don't fit in and they don't have a good feeling all the way around, I don't need them. Life's too short.
how
And
many
we solve
employees
those.
do you have? How many employees are
I've
there?
got just over a dozen now. Just over a
Okay.
dozen. We actually have less than we used to because we've gotten much more efficient and technology allows us
Yeah.
to do more
Mhm.
business with less people.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Now you mentioned, right, obviously, what you learned in the military and how you brought that forth. You are also passionate about hiring veterans. Talk about that.
When I got out of the military, one of the jobs I applied to was for an insurance company here in Dallas. We just moved down here. And they were moving from 1401 to 360, their old computer systems, and from autocoder to COBOL. I had just spent the last year of my time in the Marine Corps helping to rewrite the Joint Unified Military Pay System to pay all the all the military, and on these two computer systems. And the recruiter at that company said he didn't think that my military experience would apply to civilian life. He, of course, was an idiot. The company went out of business a few years later, and I think it's because they hired the wrong people. If you haven't been in the military, you don't understand what military experience brings to the table. The discipline, the sense of mission, the leadership skills, the discipline both external and internal. All these things that have allowed you to succeed in the military can be quite well used in civilian life. But if you've not been in the military or been around it heavily, you don't understand. And most business people and most Americans haven't been. So they don't understand. And I find that my veteran hires, for the most part, do superb work. So yeah, I without veterans, we wouldn't have a country. So I think they deserve extra consideration. That's me.
Mhm.
But I'm prejudiced that way.
Yeah.
That's my prejudice is I like veterans because I am one. And my father was, two of my sisters were, my grandfather was. We've been citizen soldiers in this country for over 200 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Fantastic. So I have an oddball question. Every time I've watched a military movie, the sergeant is the one who maybe enforces the discipline, but yells and screams and gets in people's faces. How does your military background affect your leadership style in business?
Well, First of all, movies are not real life. There's TV. Okay. Yeah, there are times you yell at people, and there are times you quietly take them aside and counsel them and
Mhm.
show them how things are done and encourage them and work with them and solve their problems and get them out of trouble and other things. Yeah, occasionally yell at them, but it makes good movies. It doesn't make good leadership.
Thank you.
So yes, as we've talked about, military experience can help with all this, and leadership training is leadership training, and it teaches you these things. Now, I'll be honest, the hierarchical aspects of the military don't translate well into business. In the military, everybody is either subordinate or superior to you. Everybody, period.
Mhm.
So that doesn't translate well, and I'm very grateful to my wife, who's a much better people person than I was, to have broke me of some of those habits fairly early on. I married her. She had 5 kids when I married her, and she quickly broke me of some of the dictatorial and hierarchical things in the military with just the kids before we get into business. So
That's
kids don't
great.
react well to being yelled at either. So
No. So I'm curious, what frustrates you in your business?
business would be wonderful, except for 3 things: clients, vendors, and employees.
Mhm.
So it's the people aspect that's frustrating at times. Uh, it's everybody's unique. Everybody has their own problems, and the problems change. And so you deal with them, and you deal with them from vendors, you deal with them from uh, clients, you deal with them from employees, and that can be frustrating at times. Uh, I like the business I'm in. It's business to business. It's not consumer related, and I like that better because it tends to be more business. But yeah, I mean, we have clients that have hard times and can't pay their bills, and uh, we have employees that get sick, have sick family, get frustrated, want a better job, want more money. Uh, you know, it's
Mhm.
just people.
Mhm. Charles, you said earlier you've got to change with the times. Just looking back, again, thinking longevity and how it may, or whether it's through the years or the change from being in the military to being in the business space, what have been some of the changes you're most proud of that you've made?
Well, for instance, we stepped very early into the internet. Uh, we were the first green payroll. We were the first crypto payroll.
Mm.
I try to keep up with things and how things change. We moved from fax machines to everything's almost electronic. We, we, we create very few physical paychecks. Mostly it's direct deposit, debit cards, electronic payments. Um, we don't make physical tax payments anymore. We used to make it with the bank. It's all electronic now. We're a batch filer. We send out files and millions and millions of dollars every day and move lots of money. Um, so keeping up with the times, keeping up with technology, keeping up with the law and the changes in the law. Uh, this allows you to be successful. If you don't keep up with it, you're going to be left in the you know in the ditch. They're going to run over you. Uh,
Mm.
we have been very leading edge in this, and in many cases are well ahead of our competition, and tend to stay there. Uh, we, we we just believe in that. I was trained as a computer programmer and systems engineer back in the '60s, and was very early into data processing, and just kept with that, and that's led me to do other things and just
Mhm.
keep up. It keeps you young too.
Yeah.
So I'll ask the same question again. Now, how about you as a leader, or how about you as a leader? How have you? What's a change you're most proud of that you've made through the years?
I've gotten more laid back over the years. Okay, I'm not quite as uptight as I was in the beginning, which is good. My marriage helped that a lot,
Mm.
and time has helped that. And getting old and decrepit and slowing down. And one of the major changes I made and this took a few years, was style versus substance.
Mm.
In the beginning, I was insistent that things be done a certain way. And over time, I began to realize, as long as if the ending point is Z and we're starting here at A, I tend to be very straightforward in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if a person wants to go A, W, X, N, Q, and Z, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be done unless it's important. And there are some important things we can talk about. Personal style is fine. It doesn't always work, and so we correct things. But not to be so oriented on the way things are done as much as the results. If the results fulfill the mission, I'm okay. And that was a hard one to learn.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Charles, you mentioned the training that you get in the military, and you've been talking about tax laws changing, keeping up, keeping people current. Can you share a little bit for some of our listeners about how you approach the training part of staying on top and being better than your competitors?
Well, first of all, I read the trades. I get all the emails from the IRS. I study this. I read on it. I read constantly. I read business magazines. I read tax reports, Journal of Accountancy, Journal of Taxation, briefs from the U.S. Tax Court. All of these things to keep up with the changes in the law, things on what's coming out of Congress. I talk to my congressman periodically, get updates on things that are going on, because every time they want to change revenue streams, they change payroll. 75% of U.S. revenue comes through the payroll system. 75%
Wow.
of U.S. tax revenue comes through payroll.
Wow.
Okay. People don't realize that.
No.
It all comes through here. All the withholding, all the employment taxes, all those things. That's the vast majority of federal revenue. Comes through payroll. We're important. We keep the government running.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, as CEO and leader of the company, you're taking a pretty kind of point person perspective on all the reading, the changes, and then disseminating that to the troops, so to speak.
Exactly, and I'm bringing on my operations manager, Chris Boyce, who will probably be my replacement in this. Maybe not CEO, but he'll be handling the technical side. He's getting his qualifications and professional certificates and so on to be able to do things like join the IRS Advisory Council and other things, and take cases for tax court and so on. So he's working on all that. He's beginning to pick up on a lot of it too. We discuss it and we see it, and then we disseminate it both to our employees and, where appropriate, to our clients, because we want to keep them up to speed on things that are going on. Because the more knowledgeable my clients are, the better decisions they can make. And so I want them to make the best decisions they can for their profitability and their longevity. So we're constantly going out to them with tidbits and changes. We produce educational videos several times a month on changes. We've done some things recently on the new independent contractor rules that have come out from the Biden administration, and some of the aspects of that, which can be, depending on how the courts view it, literally could put the gig economy out of business. It's going to depend on the courts, and we're anxious to see how the various courts rule on it and how it goes up through the appeals levels and what the Supreme Court says in the end. It's going to be fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So mentioning the gig economy, does your workforce work remotely?
All of them work remotely part of the time, except one. Chris
Okay.
Chris Thompson, one of my CSRs, doesn't like to work at home because his wife's there and he doesn't want to be there. And try to work. Okay, and try to work. So
That's funny. Charles, yeah, I mentioned your latest book. It's a guide for small businesses and startups. So let's talk startups for a second. About 20% of startups fail within the first year, and roughly half of them fail within 5 years. So, what are some of the concepts in the book, or what tips would you give to an entrepreneur or one of our listeners who's in that first 5 years to ensure growth and longevity?
well, there's a couple of things that startups and beginning stage entrepreneurs often fail at. One, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what reports to file, what numbers they need to get from what government entities, and when they need to file, and what they need to file, what they need to deposit, when they need to deposit it, how much they need to deposit, and all of that minutia of the tax system. They don't know it. We detail that in the book, and obviously that's why you use a payroll service. The next biggest thing, and this we see it all the time, is classification of employees, workers.
Right.
Are they independent? Are they independent contractors or are they employees? That's not a choice. You don't get to say, "Oh, I'm going to be an independent contractor for you," or I say to the worker, "You're going to be an independent contractor." There's a whole body of law that encompasses that relationship. Now, there are some things you can do to structure the relationship between the two of you that can tilt it one way or the other. But that requires knowledge and expertise of how to structure that. And that's not something beginning entrepreneurs normally know. They just write them a check and pay them. That may or may not be the right thing. And it may or may not be very expensive in the end when they come in and audit you. And
Right.
you will get audited. It's not a matter of if you get audited. Your state has a body of unemployment tax auditors whose job is to audit every business in the state, and they will get to you, I promise you. Unless you go out of business first, and then they'll audit the corpse.
No, you're right. I mean, if there's a listener who isn't familiar with some of those cases, right? That's the back. I'm trying to think back in the '90s when Microsoft and the contractors and there's the
Boeing, Microsoft, UPS, yeah, on and on.
Yeah,
Federal
there are,
Express.
and the penalties are the government wants their taxes. They want their money, and hiding employees as contractors is very expensive. Yeah,
And the government is not forgiving.
No.
A number of years ago, they touted a kindler, gentler IRS. I never did see it.
Well, you were on the advisory board. What did you do about it?
Bitched. And it did absolutely no good whatsoever. Now, you have to understand, the IRS is 100,000 people, and it's growing, obviously, by another 80,000. Civil servants. And overall, they're reasonably nice people. They're fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters. They're not bad people for the most part. There's a few bad apples. But they're civil servants. They don't have the same view of the world that we do as entrepreneurs. There's no profit motive. They work their 40 hours a week, take their 30 days vacation, and retire in 30 years. And that's their choice. And for a non-entrepreneur, it's not a bad way to live. It really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you like, it would drive me crazy. I like working for myself. I like being the boss. I like being an entrepreneur, but it's not for everybody. but they don't view the world the way we do. And that's why the advisory council exists, is so we can advise them of things outside of the Beltway, outside of their bubble that they live in. And some of the commissioners are very open to it, and some are less. Chuck Reddick, who was the commissioner when I was on the advisory council, had been a tax lawyer and had actually been on the advisory council years earlier. So he was very open to our input.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a final question for me. Founders at some point in time have to step aside, and succession planning is tricky at best. And I think we've seen it all. We've seen them go outside to hire, that we've seen them have 2 or 3 people within the organization who are candidates to be a successor. And we've seen sons and daughters who really sometimes are prepared to be a successor and sometimes clearly are not.
Absolutely.
Right. So just your thoughts on, your successor, on succession plans in general. I think our listeners would love to.
For us, it's real simple. The business is going to the employees. They help me build it. I'm a widower. My children are well grown and have their own lives and are not interested in it. And I wouldn't bring somebody in from outside if there was any other way. And so I've been training up my people to take over when I decide to retire or die. The joke in the office is, one of these days they'll come in and find me dead at my desk and I've retired. And that may happen. I don't know. But no, it's going to them. Part of my retirement will be selling it to them at a discounted price because they've helped build it. They should, when I no longer am involved in it, who better to reap the rewards than the people who helped build it? Excuse me, I don't. To me, it makes all the sense in the world. We're in the middle of our succession planning and figuring out exactly how we're going to do it. But I've said this on other vlogs, and other podcasts, so they all know it's coming. I can't get out of it now.
So is the legal terminology you're going to set up an ESOP?
That's what we're discussing with the attorneys, just to figure out the best way to do it.
Okay.
But an ESOP may be it.
Okay. Thank you. That's awesome.
Excellent. I'm looking at my colleagues. Any final questions for Charles before we round third, head home and get practical as we typically want to do?
I asked my final.
I think I'm good. We covered a lot of bases.
Awesome. All right, Charles. So this is the part of every episode where we try to leave our listeners with something practical, something that they can implement in their business, or either in their business or in themselves to grow, to make progress, to make inroads in their business. So, would you like to go first, or do you want us to go?
I don't mind. I mean, to me, it's a matter of you have to take care of yourself and your people. You've set your mission. Now it's your job. Once your mission is set and you're working on it, then you take care of your men. Okay?
Awesome.
It's Marine Corps. You take care of your people. You treat them right. You help them. You train them. You give them authority to go with the responsibility. Use good leadership skills, and they'll respond. And you'll get efforts from them that will amaze you and astound you and make you a lot of money. So
That's awesome.
What more can you ask for?
Sounds like a pretty simple formula.
That's right.
I think so.
Yeah.
It worked for me for a third of a century. So
Awesome. All right. Any others? Or that's pretty darn good. Good. Okay. Patsy, Leb.
I've got a couple.
Okay.
I'll go. Be clear and honest about what your strengths are and what they are not. And when you're clear about what they are not, hire other people to take care of those areas in your business.
Absolutely.
And the other one I would add is be adaptive. You got to change with the times.
Mm. Excellent. Okay, Leb, you want to go, or you may
Okay.
go?
Well, yeah. I mean, piggybacking on Patsy. Yeah, there's nothing wrong. Don't struggle with delegating to other people whose strengths might complement your own. And I just love the thought of good leadership doesn't change with the times.
Yeah.
Mm.
And gosh, I have three full pages, Charles. So I say that as a compliment. Being entrepreneurial, it's also the responsibility to your business and your people to recognize there are some things you just don't know very much about. And education is a constant, and it's very important. The last thing that I'd share is, let's get practical, is you talked about constant training and educational videos in-house, and things that we know a lot of companies don't really do. And so it's not like, okay, one big program or one seminar a year and suddenly you've learned all you need to learn for your position. It doesn't work that way. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Awesome. All right, I'll go. And actually, I'll piggyback. The note that I took for that section is the more knowledgeable your clients are, the better decisions they can make. And so take some of the responsibility for keeping them informed. I thought that was a great point. And to do that, this is another next, let's get practical. Make it your job to stay up to date on the trends, right? What's impacting your industry? That's a key role of senior leadership. And Charles, you talked about all the different things you're reading and consuming to stay up to date. You've got to find time. You've got to make time to do that. And then I think the last one, I resonated with this. It doesn't always have to be style over substance. That it's okay to be results focused and not so much style focused. When the results, as long as the results meet the mission. I thought that was a good note for our CEO listeners. So, Charles, talk real quick about Get Payroll. Talk about the company. Give an opportunity for our listener who might need talk more about the company and what you do, and how someone might get in touch with you if they are interested in learning more.
Well, we're Get Payroll, and we're all over the web. We have our own YouTube channel. But Get Payroll provides payroll services to small and medium-sized businesses and payroll-related services, timekeeping, employee manuals, HR, work with benefits, workers' comp, all these things that are related to payroll. We have an employee discount buying service that's part of it, and other things. So we try to provide as many services to our clients as possible in the payroll realm. We're not. I don't do their income taxes, and I don't do a lot of things. But if they're interfacing with the IRS on employment tax issues, or the state or the local, we do that. We take a 2840, a limited power of attorney, on every client, so we can advocate with them to the IRS. And why I became a U.S. tax court practitioner is, if the problem is not solvable through the standard administrative procedures with the IRS, we can file a petition in tax court and get a whole nother bite at the apple. And 95% of U.S. tax court cases are settled out of court. So we're compliance experts on top of everything else we do. Our competitors do a fairly good job of producing paychecks, or they'd be out of business. But they don't handle the compliance like we do. They don't have CPAs available. They don't have U.S. tax court practitioners available. They can't take it to court for you. They can't go to that IRS meeting and have that meeting with them as your representative, as your power of attorney. And that's something, as a CPA, I do and do regularly. And it's very, very effective, and makes us
Excellent.
Far superior to our competitors in the compliance arena. Now, honestly, you may never need it, but 40% of all small businesses get hit with a tax penalty every year, which means if you didn't get hit last year or the year before, you're due this year.
You do. Excellent. And it's good to have an expert in your corner. Awesome. So if someone is interested in finding out more, is it getpayroll.com?
Getpayroll.com. My
Excellent.
email is cjr@getpayroll. And frankly, if they got a quick question, 972-353-0000.
Love it.
Ask for Charles.
Love it. Excellent. Charles, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Frustrated CEO podcast. It was a pleasure. Appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Great to meet you.
Thank you. Yes, wonderful.
Listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. Here's what we're going to ask you to do. If you're liking this episode and previous episodes, do us a favor, follow the show. Don't just listen, but follow the show, because that way you'll be alerted to when new episodes drop. And then if you really like us, and we're talking to you, Brad Buckles, go ahead and leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. I just called out one of our listeners. How's that? So, Patsy, Leb, thank you so much. It's always a joy. I appreciate you both.
Pleasure.
Charles, thank you. And listener, we will see you again next time on the Frustrated CEO podcast.